All right, people, it's us. We're live. It's the Four Quarters of a Whole Idiot podcast. We're back again for season 4, the only podcast in existence to start a new season after 2 episodes the previous season. But it's the easiest way to organize it. What's up, boys? How are we feeling tonight?
I'm feeling good. Talk
Jay,
about
how
some
are you doing?
football. Let's go.
Yes.
Yeah, feeling good, excited.
Yeah, me too.
Almost football season.
It sure is. And hopefully this is the start of a more regular podcast again for the Four Quarters of a Whole Idiot gang. Just as a reminder to people, we are live on Twitch right now, twitch.tv/4QWIHQ. But if you are interested in streaming the podcast afterwards, we're available on Spotify and Apple Podcast pretty much immediately following the show as well. So you can catch up on everything related to what it is that we're doing. And what it is that we're doing today is we are going to preview the 2024 NFL season together. We're going to talk about the offseason that just occurred. One of the more notable off seasons in recent memory, I think we'll all agree. We'll talk a bit about some coaching changes in the league, a rule change, everything that's occurred in the last 5 or 6 months since the end of the season. And then we're going to go over our predictions and some of our fellow friends' predictions of the football season that is to occur. Where do we have certain teams finishing? What's our Super Bowl matchup? Who's our MVP? We got all that and more coming in right now. We're doing it right now. All right.
Let's do it.
So just to introduce ourselves, my name's Noah. On my right is Brett. Longtime podcast co-host. Literally 10 years ago, Brett and I were podcasting the very first episodes of Four Quarters of a Whole Idiot, along with Austin 1 and Austin 2. I promise to our listeners and viewers we'll have an actual 4-quarter podcast hopefully sometime soon, and we'll actually have more people hosting. But it's good to have Brett, freaking legend. And then on the bottom of your screen is Jay. We love Jay.
What's up?
Jay, how's it going, my friend?
Pretty good.
Good.
Pretty good.
All right, guys. So let's not waste any more time. We're a couple minutes into it. We're going to start right off with a 2024 NFL offseason recap. We're going to talk about some things together quickly. And so one of the things that we wanted to ensure that people knew about was the kickoff rule change is kind of like the one major rule change that's come to the NFL for this new season. And so taking a quote from ESPN.com, this is what they say verbatim. Instead of running at full speed towards each other, Braveheart style, no one other than the kicker can move until the ball either touches the ground or he touches a player. And this rule is currently approved for 1 year. So how are we feeling about this? We'll start with Brett.
Yeah, I mean, this is just like another way for the NFL to protect the players. It's pretty obvious that a good amount of injuries are caused from kickoffs. So they're doing what they think is in the best interest of the players. So from that standpoint, I think it's a good rule change. However, as a fan, I think it takes away from the exciting, 99-yard kickoff returns for touchdowns. So that kind of sucks, but yeah, I mean, I'm not it doesn't take away from the game too much, so I can't really complain a ton.
All right. And Jay, how are you feeling about the rule change?
Yeah, I mean, definitely agree. I think it's good for player safety and player health. Hopefully we'll see less injuries on the kickoff side of the ball, but I definitely have to agree. I think the opening kickoff, super hyped up, super exciting moment, might take a little bit of the air out of it, but overall I think it's probably good for the game.
Yeah, I pretty much am echoing the same thing with you guys. The thing that I wanted to point out again from this article here is that it's affecting team strategy and personnel. It definitely makes you wonder how kickoffs are going to be run from the return side of things. One notable kickoff returner, Cordero Patterson, signed with the Steelers in the offseason. We'll talk a bit more about him later. So there might be some even more value in place for people who can grab the ball and immediately start running. So I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. So that's one of the only big kind of rule changes coming to the NFL. So we wanted to make sure that we covered that quickly. Transitioning next, let's talk about some notable coaching changes. There were a couple in the NFL this past offseason, but the two that we wanted to make sure that we talked about were the new head coach of the Chargers and the new head coach of our New England Patriots. So coming out of New England, some major news earlier this offseason. Bill Belichick is maybe not officially retired, but at least is no longer the head coach and de facto, leader of the New England Patriots. In his place, we have Gerard Mayo, former longtime New England Patriots player, who is now coming in as the first head coach in the team's history since 2000, I believe, was Belichick's first season. So we'll start with Jay here. How are we feeling coming into an actual brand new era of Patriots football?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely going to be interesting. It's going to be super different. I've never really been one to hate on Bill, especially over the last couple of years, but I definitely think the timing was right for both sides. I think it was time for Bill to move on, and I especially think it was time for New England to move on, starting out this new era of Patriots football. I think we needed somebody a little bit younger, maybe a little bit more energy to start the rebuilding of this franchise. And I think Gerard Mayo is a great fit. I personally either wanted to see Gerard Mayo or Mike Vrabel be brought in as a head coach. I think I wanted it to be a Patriots guy, and I think Mayo is probably the best fit for the job.
All right, and Brett, we'll kick it over to you. Are you sharing a similar sentiment, or how are you feeling about this?
Yeah, in terms of like the Bill Belichick thing, I mostly agree with what Jay is saying. It was time to move on for sure. Um, Bill was slowly kind of putting us in a deeper and deeper hole um, with every draft. Um, and getting somebody younger that can relate to players is like definitely, I think, the most beneficial thing in today's NFL. However, I don't really necessarily believe Mayo's the guy. I think they really should have gone for a more offensive type head coach, especially like when you're drafting a quarterback at number three, having to develop that young quarterback. I just wish that they would have taken that more seriously and maybe brought in somebody that has more experience with developing quarterbacks. And I don't know, Mayo as a first year head coach, I think he's got a lot to learn. He's got a lot to learn.
Yeah, I think that's the big thing that I was going to hammer home myself, is that, like, for us as Patriots fans, we just need to be patient and just understand that we finally, like, the circle of life has come back to New England, and we're likely not going to be good for quite a bit. I kind of get the feeling we're all going to predict them to not do too well this season, and that's okay. So I guess the final thing I'll just ask quickly is, how long should we be giving Gerard Mayo until we can, start to, as fans, to expect maybe a winning season? Like, what's a reasonable amount of time?
I would say personally, I'm expecting by year three, the Patriots should be a playoff team.
Okay. Jay, how are we feeling?
I think I definitely share that sentiment. I think by year 3 they should be. I don't think they're going to be a playoff team this year, and next year there's probably still going to be some rebuilding going on. Although I could see, that more aggressive New England fan base and more aggressive Boston media maybe pushing that expectation up to year 2. But I think year 3.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the point is well made, and I agree with you guys. All right, so we'll switch over to the other kind of large notable change in head coaching in the NFL, and that is Jim Harbaugh is now the new head coach for the Los Angeles Chargers, fresh off of a national championship, correct, with Michigan.
That is correct.
So he's coming in now. He's taking over for a Chargers team that I think we can all agree has been underperforming, to say the least, especially in the Justin Herbert era. We'll go over some changes to that team, the Chargers, in a little bit, but just off of the staffing change, we'll start off with Brett, who's definitely, the resident college football expert. How are you feeling? Do you think this is going to solve the issues over there?
I'm not really sure, to be honest. I know Jim Harbaugh as a run first, like ground and pound type head coach. And they obviously are following that approach by drafting an offensive tackle, number 5 overall, which we'll talk about more later. But yeah, I mean, they want to establish this running game, yet they bring in J.K. Dobbins, who can't stay healthy to save his life, and Gus Edwards, who is, pretty much same thing. So if they're really relying on those two guys, like, I don't know. But yeah, I mean, Harbaugh should be an improvement over Bailey, their last guy. But my expectations for the Chargers are pretty low this season. And once we talk about our standings predictions later, like, that will reflect in my standings.
Okay. Jay, do you have any thoughts yourself on the change here?
Yeah, I think he's definitely an interesting fit. I think that the Chargers definitely need to do something new. I mean, Herbert's first 4 years in the league have kind of been, honestly, they've been a waste. I think he's a top 5 talent, and they made the playoffs one time, or yeah, once so far
maybe
under that
2021.
era. I personally don't know a whole lot about college football, so I kind of defer back to his 49ers days. I think he did a great job as the 49ers head coach, but there was a lot of talent on both sides of the ball in that era. So I'll be interested to see what he's able to do with maybe a little bit less talent, and I think a team that overall is riddled with injury risk.
Yeah, my biggest fear is that he's going to turn Justin Herbert into like a game manager. And I think Justin Herbert needs to be comfortable. He needs to, run around the pocket and, throw those off-platform throws. And that's who Justin Herbert is. If you don't allow him to do the athletic type of plays that he's normally accustomed to making, then you're wasting his talents. So if you're just going to run the ball 50 times like Michigan did, and I mean, if you look at JJ McCarthy's throwing stats this year, he was one of out of all the quarterbacks drafted, he threw the least amount of passes. So they're not I don't expect the Chargers to be, especially considering they got rid of their two best receivers from last season. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. We'll see what happens, but I'm not optimistic.
Yeah, I don't think he's even looking back on his 49ers days, I don't think he's a Alex Smith or even Colin Kaepernick kind of quarterback. I think a more appropriate comparison could be Andrew Luck, and I don't know if Harbaugh's the right quarterback to kind of get that out of him, or the right head coach to get that out of him.
Right. Yeah, it's certainly an interesting time. It's just kind of another large change in the list of changes that has happened to a lot of rosters in the NFL. We'll kind of transition into that and go into the first thing we want to mention here is the NFL draft occurred, of course, a few months ago. Without exhausting every single pick, we made the decision to kind of go over the top 5 picks and see if there's anything that we want to quickly say about a few of the big names that are coming out of college and into the NFL. And again, we'll probably be leaning on Brett a bit more to see if there's any insight that you specifically want to lend here. But just for the purposes of the audio listeners and just folks at home, the top 5 picks were Caleb Williams, quarterback to the Bears, Jaden Daniels to the Commanders, a quarterback as well. Quarterback Drake May to the New England Patriots, Marvin Harrison Jr. to the Cardinals, wide receiver, and Joe Alt, the offensive lineman, to the Chargers. So we'll kick off with Brett here, and I'll kind of let you lead this discussion. If there's anybody you specifically want to touch on, any predictions for who might have a good rookie season, who may not, we'll lead off with you and see what you got to say.
Yeah, so we could start off with Caleb Williams, the number 1 overall pick. Obviously, there was a lot of Caleb Williams discourse leading up to draft day with, the painted fingernails, him crying in his mother's lap. He's an interesting character, to say the least. I think he ultimately will be successful in the NFL. Considering I think out of all the teams he could have gone to in the top of the draft, the Bears were probably the best choice, considering they have weapons there already in Keenan Allen, DJ Moore. They drafted Rome Odunze. They snatched DeAndre Swift in free agency. So I really like the moves that they've made to kind of build around this young quarterback. Really what it comes down to for me is whether or not Caleb Williams has the it factor. If he can kind of cancel out the noise and just play football,
Right.
I think he has a chance to be really, really good. But we'll see what happens with that. The Commanders took Jaden Daniels, who, as a Patriots fan, that's who I wanted the Patriots to take. Jaden Daniels has connection to Brandon Ayuk. Had we drafted Jaden Daniels, we'd probably have Ayuk. But so is that's just how the cookie crumbles, Drake May to the Patriots at number 3. Drake May is, if you watched him in college, he was very, very good the first year he played as a starter. That was when he had Josh Downs, who got drafted by the Indianapolis Colts, was his top receiver. And he was just going to Josh Downs every single play. Josh Downs obviously left for the NFL, and he really struggled last season without his top receiver. He threw a lot of bad interceptions, but the talent is still there for him to be successful. So I think he needs to sit for a while and just kind of learn the style of the NFL, the game speed, everything else. But I do think he'll be a good quarterback, just not right away. Marvin Harrison Jr., I don't think we really need to talk about him much. I think everybody is under the assumption that he's just going to be a stud. And that's not just because of his father. If you watch him at Ohio State or just seen any highlight videos of him at all, even in training camp, he's breaking people's ankles. So he's going to be exciting in fantasy this year. He's just going to be an exciting player to watch, and I'm really looking forward to watching him. And then Joe Alt to the Chargers. I briefly mentioned it before, but I think Harbaugh is really going to try and establish that run game. I think he's going to really try and take the pressure off of Justin Herbert in the beginning of the season. And it's really going to be up to, like I said, J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards to see if they can kind of carry that workload early on.
All right. Jay, do you have anything else that you'd like to add here? You don't have to, but
I think that was pretty much perfect. I'd 100% agree. I do think Drake May needs to sit a substantial part, if not the majority of his first season. We can get into that a little bit later, though, talking about our standings and stuff. I'd agree. I honestly, there was a part of me that kind of wished we were going to take Marvin there, or that the Patriots were going to take Marvin Harrison Jr. there, although I knew it in all likelihood wasn't going to happen. It's something that I personally would have liked to see, but other than that, no, I think think Brett kind of summed it up perfectly.
All right. Yeah, there's certainly a few, very exciting rookies here coming in. So, if nothing else, it just adds to the hype of the offseason that just occurred, along with these new faces to the league coming in. There's many new faces in many new places, as we'll transition to talking about now. What I am going to do, just for the audio listeners and those watching the stream, I'm going to put a list of a lot of the notable offseason signings, trades, and so forth, and a couple of people who are staying put in specific teams as well. And what I'm going to do is we're just going to go down the list. We'll go myself, Brett, and Jay, and we are either going to assign A through F rating to said transactions, or we're going to give a 1 to 2 word, gut reaction. You guys can do both. You can do one or the other, but just kind of let us know how you guys are feeling about these. A quick disclaimer: there is a chance that I don't have every single notable person that has moved spots. There's also a chance that I have, maybe messed up some pricing on the contracts and so forth. I tried to add those where I could, but as I'm reading out, just for the benefit of those listening, with audio specifically, not watching the stream, we're going to go ahead and read these out as we go. And so we're going to start off, and I should also finally mention that these are mostly in order of transaction. I did my best to do that where I could, but there's not a guarantee that these are all, in chronological order. Okay, so first we have Chase Young to the Saints. I'm going to give that I'll give it an A minus.
Okay, I'll go B.
I'd say B plus.
Okay, Justin Fields traded to the Steelers. C minus.
I really like this move for the Steelers. I expect him to play sooner rather than later. I'm gonna go B minus.
Yeah, I mean, I actually do kind of like that move a little bit more. I think I'd settle around B minus or B.
Okay. Jimmy Garoppolo to the Rams to back up Matthew Stafford. I'll give that a B.
In terms of backups, he's probably one of the better ones. So yeah, I'll go B.
Yeah, B plus. I think he's back where he belongs as a backup quarterback, and you have him in case Stafford gets hurt.
All right, next we have Caleb Williams getting a rather great asset to his rookie season. Keenan Allen traded to the Bears. I'm going to give that I'll give it a B plus.
I'll go A minus just for the fact that I'm pretty sure they only gave up like a 4th round pick, which is kind of nothing for a guy like that. So yeah, A minus.
Yeah, I think B plus.
In the chat, we have someone saying Jimmy G is a Ram, Keenan Allen is a Bear. Where have I been? You're in the right spot. We've conglomerated everything together, and we are giving you all of the news that you might have missed because this was an insane offseason. Okay, and speaking of insane offseason, Stephon Diggs has been traded to the Texans from the Bills. His contract has been restructured to 1 year, $22.5 million. I'm going to give that an A solid.
Yeah, that's an easy A for me. The Houston Texans really are. I felt like they're kind of one piece away, so it'll be interesting to see if Diggs is that missing piece, and if he can kind of keep those like on-field outbursts to a minimum.
All right, Jay, how you feeling about Diggs?
What was the price that they paid for Diggs? Do we know
his I don't know what it is. I just know that his contract was restructured. It's a 1 year deal. 22.5 million is the total value there.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think it's a solid A minus or an A. I think he's a great player to bring into that team. And if it doesn't work out, you only have him for 1 year, so you can say goodbye to him at the end of the year if he doesn't quite work out for them.
All right. In the wake of a season of many drops, the Chiefs finally get a pretty high tier wide receiver. Hollywood Brown has signed to the Chiefs for a 1 year, $11 million deal. I will give this an A grade as well.
I'll go B plus. I'm not a huge Hollywood Brown fan, but I do think he fits with kind of the Kansas City offense. If he can stay healthy and kind of limit the drops, I think it's an underrated move. But we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I think a solid A minus. I think they need somebody there to help out Mahomes other than Rice and Kelsey, and I think he has the potential to be that guy, and I think he brings a much needed and pretty good deep ball threat to that Chiefs lineup.
All right. Another wide receiver move. Curtis Samuel moves from the Washington Commanders to the Buffalo Bills. 3 year, $24 million deal. I'll give this a B minus.
I'll go B. I like Curtis Samuel a lot. I think he could be a valuable pickup. And I kind of have him as like a fantasy sleeper right now. So, yeah, he's going like really late in drafts, like 13th, 14th round. So if you have any fantasy drafts coming up, I would consider drafting him late.
Yeah, I think definitely at the very least a B value on that. You had to bring somebody in to replace that hole. Obviously, he's not Stephon Diggs, but I think he's a great fit, and I think that's a really good value for him too.
All right. Coming off of a pretty decent season in Washington, Sam Howell has signed with the Seattle Seahawks to back up Geno Smith. I'll give that a C plus, B minus, B minus.
C. I don't know. I don't think Sam Howell's really that good. He threw an absurd amount of interceptions last year.
He got me a few wins in fantasy last year. I don't want to hear it. Maybe I have a soft spot for him.
Yeah. What do you think, Jay?
I think a B. I think as of right now, he's definitely a backup. He might be able to go out there and learn a lot from a guy who's been around for a while, like Geno Smith. I think as of right now, he kind of reminds me of like a probably significantly worse Jameis Winston.
Yeah, we'll get to Jameis Winston's new home in a little bit. Also, another notable quarterback backup situation, Joe Flacco, after winning Comeback Player of the Year, is signed with the Indianapolis Colts, seemingly to back up Anthony Richardson. I will give that I'll give it like a B.
Yeah, I'll say B plus just for the season that Flacco had last year. I don't know if he still has anything left in the tank, but considering Anthony Richardson only played like 4 games last year, it's good to have that insurance, especially somebody that's been around for a long time that can hopefully show Anthony Richardson some things, you know.
Yeah, I think a solid B. I love the comparison we have in the chat here for our audio listeners that Joe Flacco is the Rich Hill of football. I think that's a perfect comparison, and I think he's a decent backup to have in case Richardson gets hurt. Do I think he can do what he did again if he is called upon as a starter? Probably not, but decent to have.
All right. In defensive news, Bobby Wagner, likely a future Hall of Famer in my opinion, has signed with the Washington Commanders. I'll give that a B grade as well.
That's one move I didn't know happened, but I'll give it a B as well. That's actually a really solid move for them.
Yeah, I'd say I'd also agree with the B. I think anything they can do to strengthen that roster will definitely help them out.
Bobby Wagner is 34 years old. We had someone in chat said he's got to be at least 55. He is 34. He's entering, I believe, his 12th season. A quick glance is telling me that. Okay. We have a couple of new wide receivers going to maybe end their career with the Tennessee Titans, as is customary. Calvin Ridley signs a large money deal, 4 years, $92 million with the Titans. I'll give that a B minus.
I'll give that an A minus, and I'll tell you why. All of the receivers that have signed like after Calvin Ridley are making like an insane amount of money. Even at the time, we thought Calvin Ridley's deal was big. Now you're seeing all these other receivers get paid, and Calvin Ridley's deal isn't looking that bad anymore. So I really think the Patriots should have done absolutely whatever it took necessary to get Calvin Ridley here. And the fact that he's not on the team is a travesty, but people will say it's because of the Massachusetts taxes. That's not true at all. If you really like weigh it out, it is a difference of like $1 million, which to a guy like Calvin Ridley is probably nothing.
I think it's a solid like B or B plus. I think there's definitely a ton of potential there for him. I'm honestly not a huge Will Levis believer, so I don't think this really actually significantly moves the dial for the Titans that much.
In extra Titans wide receiver news, Tyler Boyd has signed a 1-year deal worth up to $4.5 million to join the Tennessee Titans as well. I'll give that a C plus grade. I think Boyd's a serviceable wide receiver 3 in the league, and that's a cheap deal to get him.
Yeah, I agree. I'll go B minus, I think, as a number 3 slot receiver. Somebody that can kind of just move the chains for a young guy like Will Levis. It's going to be really important for him.
Yeah, I think B minus. It's a great depth move by the Titans.
Okay. Next, we have Deontay Johnson traded to the Panthers. I don't know what that returning package was, but he is now a Panther. I'll just give that a B minus ish.
Yeah, B minus is fair. If he can score more touchdowns in Carolina than he did in Pittsburgh, I would go higher. But I'm not really sure what Deontay Johnson has left. So at the moment, it's a B minus.
Yeah, I'd 100% agree with that. B minus. I don't know how great he's gonna be able to perform on that Panthers roster.
Yeah, we'd have to see a massive leap from Bryce Young. I don't think we're going to be getting that. So we'll see. Okay. In one of the potentially the biggest offseason acquisition, just gut reaction, Derrick Henry signs with the Baltimore Ravens, 2 years, $16 million. I'm going to give that an A grade.
Yeah, slam dunk A for me. This is something that I think has been rumored to happen for a long time. And I think it's what Derrick Henry's wanted for a long time. And with the Ravens offensive line and the stuff that they'll be able to do with Lamar and Derrick Henry, maybe some like option type stuff or RPO type stuff. I'm really excited to watch the Ravens this year because of this signing. So it's a slam dunk A for me.
Yeah, I think I'd even go a step further and give it an A plus. I mean, I don't think you can really beat that value for a guy like Derrick Henry. I know he's a bit older, but yeah, bringing him in and finally being able to put him in a spot where he doesn't have to absolutely do everything himself. I think he's gonna thrive in Baltimore with that combo with him and Lamar, and then I think is Justice Hill their second running back.
I don't know offhand, but that sounds
yeah,
right.
I think probably a little
Sounds
bit more
right.
serviceable over whoever the second string running back in Tennessee is. I can't think of that off the top of my head, but yeah, I think it's an A plus move.
Okay. In a piece of news that if you're not from New England, you don't care about, Austin Hooper signs a 1-year, $3 million deal to the Patriots. I'll give that a C minus.
C for me. He comes from the Alex Van Pelt offense, so some familiarity there. He'll be nothing more than a tight end 2. Might put up similar numbers as Mike Gesicki did last year, which, if you're a Patriots fan, he didn't really do much. So I would keep my expectations low for that, especially considering who's throwing him the ball.
Yeah, I think I'd agree with C. They've been bringing in the same type of guys to fill that tight end spot pretty much since Gronk left, and I think he's just another one of those tight end 2 type of guys. Will probably end the year with like 300 or 400 yards and maybe a couple of touchdowns.
And I don't have this written down, but in other Patriots tight end news, early in the offseason, the Patriots did re-sign Hunter Henry to a 3-year deal. I don't know the exact amount from that. I don't remember, but I do remember that did happen, right? Can anybody else confirm this now that I'm saying it out loud? Okay.
I believe so.
Okay, if that actually did happen, I'll give that a B+. I like Hunter Henry as a Patriots fan.
Yeah, he was, I think, the best tight end that was available in free agency, and they were able to retain him. So A- for me. If they didn't re-sign him, they would have been really screwed. So
Yeah, I think a B+. I think his overall time in New England has been pretty decent, and I think his stats would probably be a little bit better if it hadn't been for the quarterback situation that he's dealt with here.
All right. Before we continue on, just in the interest of time, I want to make sure that we, as we're kind of articulating our points here, let's try to just stick to that quick, like 1 to 2 word thing or grade, because I could just see this taking up more time than we're intending to. Once we get to some of the other like large changes, we can kind of do with some minor discussion. But just in the interest of time, I just want to make sure we're all on the same page there. So getting back on track here, CJ Gardner-Johnson, after a injury riddled 1 year away from the Eagles, is back. I'll give that a B+ grade.
B+.
B as well.
Okay. Jordan Poyer has gone to Miami for 1 year. I'll give that a B+.
B.
B.
Patrick Queen, after a career-high season in tackles and sacks, has defected from the Ravens to the Pittsburgh Steelers. I'm going to give that an A-.
Yeah, this is the most underrated move of the offseason, A.
I honestly didn't even realize that this had happened until now, but I'll give it an A.
Okay. Gerald Everett is now a Chicago Bear on a 1-year deal. I'll give that a C+.
C+ for me, yeah.
Yeah, C or C+. I'm not actually even too familiar with Gerald Everett.
Darnell Mooney has gone from the Chicago Bears. He signs with the Atlanta Falcons. 3-year, $33 million deal. He is getting paid $3 million more per season than Derrick Henry. I'm going to give that a C grade.
C+.
I'd say like C-. I'm not a huge fan of Mooney. I think that's a little bit of an overpay for him.
Okay. In another rather large offseason change, Joe Mixon has been traded from the Bengals to the Houston Texans, and he will, of course, take over that running back 1 role. I'm going to give that a solid B+.
I think B+ is fair. Yeah, I'll go B+.
B+.
Okay. Sam Darnold is now a Minnesota Viking. When we get to predictions for standings and so forth, our co-host, who is not here, Specht, has something to say about Sam Darnold, and I'm very excited to share that. All of that being said, I'm going to give that a C- grade.
Oh gosh. I think Sam Darnold could have some sort of like resurgence this year. I think he just needed a few years to get the Jets stink off of him, so I'll go B-.
I think as a backup, C+. As now likely the starter, I'd say a D.
Yeah, but you can't take that away from them. They didn't know that Darnold was going to get hurt.
That's true. All right, I'll go with my original then. Yeah.
Okay. So next we have Aaron Jones is now also a Minnesota Viking, 1 year, $8 million deal. I'm a fan. I'm a fan of Aaron Jones. I know opinions have soured on him, but I think that's still like a solid B plus move. I think he's at least an improvement over Alexander Madison. Rest in peace. My love for him. B plus Aaron Jones.
Improvement, yes, but I'll go B minus just because I think Aaron Jones, he's regressed every single year, the past like 4 years. So I don't see this year being any different.
That's fair. I'd go B plus. I'm personally a big Aaron Jones fan. I just think there's a lot of injury risk to go with that as well.
All right. We mentioned before we talked about Jameis Winston. He is now a Cleveland Brown. He signed a 1 year, $8.7 million deal with them to back up Deshaun Watson. I'll give that a B minus.
Yeah, as a Saints fan, I love Jameis Winston, but I don't think he'll really be playing much there. I'll give that a B minus.
Say a solid B.
All right. After a nothing season with the Patriots, Mike Gesicki is now a Cincinnati Bengal. I'll give this a B minus. He could do well over there.
B minus is a good rating. Yeah, I'll go B minus.
Yeah, I think B minus. He'll probably be a little bit better there with the better quarterback.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Now coming in to back up Aaron Rodgers in New York is Tyrod Taylor signing with the Jets. Details of the contract I do not know off the top of my head. I'll give that a B minus.
B.
I think a B. He's a pretty serviceable and decent backup QB.
All right. Zach Moss coming off of a career high in rushing yards last season, starting most of the games before Jonathan Taylor came back. He signed a 2 year, $8 million deal with Cincinnati, so kind of on the cheap. I'll give that a solid B grade.
I don't think that's the replacement you really want for Joe Mixon, so C plus.
I think a B minus. I'm not a huge believer in him, but I think it's a decent low risk, high reward contract at that value.
Okay. And finally, on this first section of offseason moves, Jacoby Brissett signs with the New England Patriots, returning home 1 year, $8 million deal. I'll give that a C plus.
Yeah, Patriots could have done a lot better in terms of a bridge quarterback. C.
Yeah, I definitely agree on the bridge QB statement. I'll talk about it a little bit more later. I mean, somebody's got to be the fall guy if we're gonna have a really bad season. So I think a C plus is fine for Brissett.
Okay, and we'll transition to the next page here. Couple final notable moves that happened. One of the larger ones, Austin Eckler is now a Washington Commander on a 2 year deal. I'll give that a B plus grade.
B minus. I think he's cooked.
He certainly was on my fantasy team.
Yeah, I think a B. I think there's a lot of injury risk there, and I don't know if he's the same guy that he used to be.
All right. I didn't realize this, but this is kicking off a few of the spiciest offseason changes. So feel free to include a few more words on how you feel about these things as we go over the next couple of ones here. Kirk Cousins signs with the Atlanta Falcons on a massive 4 year, $180 million deal. I will give that a B. B.
That's it.
Yeah. B plus? That's as high as I'm gonna go. Yeah.
I'm gonna go A. And here's why.
That's like only your third A of the night. Okay, all right, go ahead.
Here's why. The Falcons are really doing this right. Okay, they drafted Michael Penix in the first round, and they're really like putting all their chips in and saying, hey, like, we'll get to the other moves the Atlanta Falcons made later. But I mean, they needed somebody, and this was the best guy available in free agency.
I think I'd say a B plus. I think And I want to say it's a little bit of an overpay, but he definitely was the best QB available in free agency, so he was probably gonna get that money somewhere. And I think it could be a decent bridge between him and Penix. So I'd go with a B plus. I've never been a huge Kirk fan, but I think he can get the job done.
Yeah, the final thing I'll say before we move on is I love Kirk. He's a regular season merchant. He always has been. Like, that's the thing. It depends on where the goals of Atlanta are aligning with what they will realistically get out of him. And if their goal is a deep playoff run, they're not really going to get that, more than likely. I don't necessarily think that's what they're eyeing, but they could make a wild card or something. And if they're okay with that, then I think the deal is fine in the same way you guys are describing. So that's my opinion. Another large change: Saquon Barkley moves to divisional rival Philadelphia Eagles, 3-year, $37 million deal. The highest I can go, just given the last couple of seasons, is a B plus on this.
I'm gonna go A minus. I think Saquon's lack of production in the past couple of years is due more to the Giants than it has been from him. So I think this is a good move for the Eagles. And yeah, they're gonna go all in this year, so we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I'd say A minus. I think comparatively to his time in New York, I think Saquon is gonna thrive in Philly. I think it's a great move overall for both sides.
Okay. 2 years removed from being the rushing champion of the NFL and then totally blowing it on my fantasy team last year, Josh Jacobs has signed with the Green Bay Packers, 4 years, $48 million. Trying to remove any bias from the situation and the kind of contract that he signed, I will give this an A minus. I think that's a good move for the Packers because they're ramping up quick.
Yeah, I love the Packers. I'm gonna go A minus.
Yeah, I'm gonna go like B, maybe B minus. I'm not really a huge Josh Jacobs fan, and I just feel like he's not that huge of an upgrade over Jones. Maybe provides you with a little bit more consistency, but I think like a B minus.
All right, we have some other miscellaneous moves here. Gardner Minshew has signed with the Las Vegas Raiders, 2 years, $25 million. I'll give that a C plus.
C plus.
C plus.
Okay. Now the new successor to the RB1 position, New York Giants, Devin Singletary has signed on a 3-year, $16.5 million deal. I'll give that a solid B.
B minus.
I think like a C plus.
All right. Gus Edwards, and also below J.K. Dobbins towards the bottom of this screen, coming both from the Ravens now to the Los Angeles Chargers. They both signed deals. I'll lump them together and collectively give that a C plus.
Gus Edwards, I think, had like 12 rushing touchdowns last year, if I remember correctly. As a goal line back, he's not bad. I'll go B plus for Gus and F for J.K. Dobbins because he's not going to stay healthy.
Yeah, I think it's like a decent B minus overall for that backfield.
Okay. Another large acquisition for the Raiders. Christian Wilkins signs 4-year, $110 million deal. Notably had 9 sacks last season. He's going to be manning that defensive area with Max Crosby. Just given that kind of duo that we're going to see, I'll give that an A minus grade.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. The two of them next to each other in the defensive line is going to be scary for opposing teams. So A minus.
Yeah, I'd definitely agree. That's a great defensive front right there with those two. I think A minus is a good grade to give.
All right. Gabe Davis, wide receiver, signs with the Jacksonville Jaguars, 3 years, $39 million. I'll give that a B minus grade.
Yeah, as a replacement to Calvin Ridley, B minus.
C plus with that in mind.
All right. After a season in which he was projected by many to light the league on fire, Tony Pollard didn't do so well as a Dallas Cowboy, as the lone guy over there. He is now signed with the Tennessee Titans on a 3-year, $24 million deal. Given his work as an RB1 last year, the highest I will go for him is a B minus.
Under the assumption that he operates as the RB2 behind Tajay Spears, I'll go B. But if he's the starter, C.
Yeah, I think C plus. I'm just not a huge Pollard fan, and I think he probably has a pretty significantly worse offensive line there. Although I'm not too familiar with the Titans' offensive line, so I think around a C plus.
All right. Another rather large and I think maybe more quiet offseason move that could be proved to be pretty important is DeAndre Swift signing with the Chicago Bears on a 3-year, $24 million deal. Just given the context of everything that they've done in this offseason, I'll give that a B plus grade.
Yeah, I can't remember the last time the Bears have had an above average running back, probably like Matt Forte, so B plus.
Yeah, I think B plus is a fair grade to give.
All right. Steelers country, let's ride. Russell Wilson is now the QB1, at least for the time being, over in Pittsburgh. I will give that I'll give it a solid B. Something about that feels like it's going to work more than we might think.
I would tend to agree. I'm gonna go B plus because they pretty much got him for free, right? The Broncos just like released him and they picked him up, and the Broncos are still paying his contract. So
yeah, I think with that in mind, I'd maybe even go a little bit further and say A minus. I think given the context that they brought both him and Fields in, I'd go A minus there. I think he was unfairly chased out of Denver, and I think that tandem could thrive together.
All right. One of several staying in place moves that we'll discuss quickly. Baker Mayfield, after a pretty legit season in Tampa Bay, has re-signed for a 3-year, $100 million deal. I like the Bucks. I think this is a solid team that could, continue to be in that wild card conversation. I'll give that a B plus. I think it's a cool situation they have over there, given that they had lost Brady and who knew what was going to happen. Why not? Go Baker. Good for him.
You're a little bit more optimistic than I am. I'll go B minus. I don't think Baker's he's a guy that, like you said, could get you to a wild card, but that's it. If you have long-term aspirations, I don't really think he's the guy.
Yeah, I'm gonna go a little bit more in between here and settle with the B grade. I think it's fine. Long term though, I don't really know where it gets you. It probably puts you at like a consistent 500 record, which might be good enough to win that division, may or may not be. But in terms of like draft prospects and things, I don't think he's gonna bring you a great return for the future.
All right. Another, and I don't have the details of this deal, but Chris Jones has decided to stay put in Kansas City. Given that they're obviously going to be eyeing the 3-peat going into this season, I'll give that an A grade. That's a necessary person to keep around.
Yeah, A. He's the cornerstone of that defense. So
100% agreed. A. He's the thing that holds the glue together on the defense there.
All right. Alexander Mattison, after being the RB1 in Minnesota, I believe, for one season, did not perform up to expectations, and he is now a Las Vegas Raider. What a disaster. I'll give it a C plus.
As a backup, I mean, yeah, C plus.
Yeah, I'd agree a C there.
As long as he's the backup, he will be the best handcuff in fantasy football. Mark my words. That is what he has been for the last half decade. I love him so much. Okay. Unfortunately, Austin Specht is not here to comment on this. Jerry Jeudy is now a Cleveland Brown. I'll give that a C minus.
C plus for Judy.
I'll give it a C. I changed my mind.
I think a C plus. If this was a year ago, I might be giving Cleveland more of like a B plus grade, but I just not a huge fan.
All right. After a very interesting season last year with the Vikings and the Cardinals, Joshua Dobbs is now a 49er. He signed a deal to back up Brock Purdy over there. I'll give that a B minus.
Yeah, that's kind of an underrated signing for them. I'll go B.
Yeah, I honestly think B. He's a great backup QB, and given the 49ers' success and everything with Purdy, I think if they needed to bring him in to be the starter if Purdy gets hurt, I think he could be a solid game manager and get them some wins.
All right. In my opinion, is one of potentially another really sneaky but good offseason change. Mike Williams has signed with the New York Jets. So he'll be joining that wide receiving core. I'll give that a B minus. I think that's a very solid change landing spot for him.
Yeah, I don't know. My grades really depends on if Mike Williams can stay healthy because it's been the biggest struggle for him so far in his NFL career. But if he can, as a wide receiver too, paired with Aaron Rodgers, I think he could have a very good season. So I'll go B.
Yeah, I think B. There's definitely that injury risk there. I've definitely been burned by him in fantasy football a few times. If he can stay healthy and if Rodgers can also stay healthy, I think they could get something pretty good going there.
All right. We mentioned at the top of the show this evening the kickoff rule changes and how personnel changes have kind of been informed by that kickoff rule. Here's someone we could see benefiting or not, or at least being around for this change. Cordero Patterson is signed with the Pittsburgh Steelers. With that in mind, and also the offensive changes that have taken place, I'll give that a B minus grade. Maybe even a B.
Yeah, I'll go B as well.
Yeah, I think B. I think he's a good guy to have returning kickoffs and punts for you, and I think if you get him and Justin Fields on the field at the same time, I think you could see a interesting dynamic between those two.
Also, potentially, I wouldn't say sneaky, but a good person to keep in mind at the back end of your fantasy football drafts. I know he was quiet last season, but if you're in a PPR league, he could be your guy again. Another wide receiving change, Josh Reynolds has signed with the Denver Broncos. I will give that a C plus.
I don't really know much about Josh Reynolds, so C minus.
Yeah, I think that's just kind of a whatever move for both sides. I'd say a C.
Carson Wentz has signed with the Kansas City Chiefs and will now be the backup for Patrick Mahomes. All in all, I will give that a B minus.
B minus because he's reunited with Andy Reid, who seemed to get the most production out of him in his career. So hopefully he can have some sort of resurgence.
Yeah, I'd go with a B for that. I think he's a good backup, and I definitely like that pairing with him and Reid.
All right. We talked about J.K. Dobbins already, so we'll move down to DJ Chark. He has signed with the Los Angeles Chargers as well. I think he's actually a pretty underrated receiver. I'm curious to see what he does in this situation. I'll give him a B minus for the change.
B minus.
I'd agree. I think B minus. I think he brings a decent value.
All right. And finally, the most recent tidbit of news in the NFL, Matthew Judon has been traded to the Atlanta Falcons from the New England Patriots. Trying to be objective here in what this means for the Atlanta Falcons, that's obviously a B plus or an A minus from me. They're getting a stud as long as he's healthy.
Yeah, I mean, we could honestly combine Judon and Justin Simmons together. Those two moves happened, I think, 24 hours apart. And just adding the best pass rusher that was available, adding a guy like Justin Simmons who leads the league in interceptions the past like 3 seasons. Like that is going to be an interesting. Their defense is going to take a huge leap this year, and I'm excited for it.
Yeah, I think that's a solid A- move for the Falcons. I think it was definitely necessary for them to make, and a great move overall.
All right. And that has officially concluded the. Oh, Brett, your camera's gone. Let me fix you. That's my fault. That officially concludes the off-season review of all of the notable moves that I could find. So, yeah, there's a very exciting season ahead with a lot of new people in new places, exciting rookies coming in, new head coaches. So, definitely the season can't come soon enough. And we here on the podcast have assembled our brains and all individually put together our season predictions. So we're going to break down divisional standings, some playoff predictions, Super Bowl matchups, MVP. And we're going to kind of we're going to put it all out there. And we're probably going to differ quite a bit, but that's the beauty of what we're doing here. We'll see. And then the goal is sometime during the middle of the season, maybe, early November, something like that. We'll come back together. We'll kind of check on our predictions and see where we're at and see if we're treading in the right direction or not.
See how wrong we are.
Oh, sorry, Brett. Say that again.
See how wrong we are.
I know. I don't think any of us are going to be wrong about the Patriots, but how this is going to work is I'm going to, for those watching the live stream, I'm going to put on the screen a person's predictions per conference, and I'm going to give that person the opportunity to defend / articulate what they're saying and what they've written down. And then we have a couple of people who are not with us on the podcast tonight. We'll put their predictions down and we will discuss what they wrote. And then we'll wrap up from there. So we're gonna start off with Jay. I have yours right in front of me, so I'm gonna switch the stream over here, and I'm gonna put down your AFC and NFC rankings. And I'm just going to give you the opportunity to defend them and make sure you just list or you say out loud the records for audio listeners as well.
All right.
So let us have it. What do you think?
All right. So starting with my AFC East, I think the Dolphins will win the AFC East with an 11-6 record. I think the Bills and Jets will kind of tie in that second and third spot. I think the Bills come away with the tiebreaker, but I have them both at 10-7, and then I have the Patriots in dead last in the AFC East at 4-13. So kind of starting off with that, I think last year I also might have had the Dolphins winning the AFC East. I think this is finally their year. I think they came out of the gate really, really impressively last year, but kind of simmered off a little bit. I think if that offense can stay healthy, they probably have one of the better offenses in the AFC. I think it really all kind of depends on ultimately how well Tua can actually play, especially now that I think there's going to be a little bit more pressure on him given the season he had last year. So I think this could finally be their year to take the division title. I think they've been kind of just piecing their defense together piece by piece, and just making small and gradual improvements each off season. And I think this could be the year for them in the AFC East with the Bills and the Jets. I think the Bills might take a little bit of a step back without Stephon Diggs there. Josh Allen is still a great quarterback and is still the best quarterback in the AFC East. I just overall think the Dolphins have a little bit of a better team. The Jets, I could see them going either much better than this or much worse than this. I think there's just so many question marks on that roster. Can Mike Williams stay healthy? How well is Aaron Rodgers going to play coming off of that Achilles injury? And pushing close to 40 years old. Can he stay healthy himself? I think if everything goes right, they could honestly win the entire division. If everything goes really poorly, they could be down there with the Patriots in the basement again, as they were last year after everything kind of went very poorly for them. So I kind of tried to settle a little bit somewhere in the middle, and gave them that 10-7 record. Then the Patriots, there's so many things I think they could have done differently this offseason. When I saw that the Broncos were looking to pretty much get rid of Russell Wilson for absolutely nothing, I personally wanted them to bring in Russell Wilson and draft Marvin Harrison Jr. in that spot over taking Drake May there. If Jaden Daniels was on the board, I would have loved to see him come in, but given the context that he was going to, in all likelihood, be going number 2 to the Commanders, I kind of wanted to see them bring in Russell Wilson and draft Marvin Harrison Jr. Without that, I think we're probably not going to see much of Drake May this year. We're going to see a lot of Jacoby Brissett. Your offensive line is still kind of a disaster, and the defense has definitely taken a step back, especially now that the Patriots traded away Judon. So I think 4-13 is honestly maybe even being a little bit optimistic for them. So yeah, that's kind of how I feel about the AFC East. Do you want me to keep going, or
Yeah,
give
well,
y'all
you can just
thoughts on
run
that?
through it. You don't
All
have
right.
to expand on every team if you don't want to. You
Okay,
can kind of go
perfect.
about this at the rate that you
Yeah.
like.
All right. So the AFC North, I have the Ravens winning the North with a 13-4 record. The Bengals taking a wild card spot at 11-6 and being second in that division. The Steelers being third at 10-7, and the Browns being fourth at 9-8. The Ravens already were the second best team in the AFC last year, and they only got better this offseason. So I think that's pretty much where they're going to wind up. I still don't know if I think they could wind up taking the AFC number 1 seed depending on how things go. I'm excited. The week 1 matchup is Kansas City and Baltimore, right?
Yes, sir.
That's
Thursday
yeah,
night.
that's going to be a great game to watch. And I know it sounds a little crazy to say this in week 1, but I think the winner of that game could wind up winning the entire conference. At least in terms of going into the playoffs itself. The Bengals had, a lot of injury issues last year, and things just weren't quite clicking for them. I think the talent overall is still there. You've got Joe Burrow to Jamar Chase, which is one of the best QB and wide receiver hookups in the league. So I think they have a bounce back year. I don't quite think they're as good as Baltimore. The Steelers, I'm a big fan of what they did this offseason, bringing in Justin Fields and Russell Wilson. So I could see a 10-7 record for them and pushing for a wild card spot. The Browns, again, another question mark. I think there's a lot of question marks about Deshaun Watson's overall quarterback play and that offense in general. I do think that they have one of the best defenses in the AFC, but that entire division, they all have stellar defenses. So looking at the AFC South, the Texans I have in first at 12-5, the Colts in second at 9-8, the Jaguars in second at 9-8, and the Titans in last at 2-15. I'm a I'm probably really
You were
overshooting that.
not joking about Will Levis,
I
dude.
really
What did
Yeah, I
he
wasn't.
do
was.
to you?
I hate Will Levis, and I don't know why. I just don't believe in him, and losing Derrick Henry, I just don't believe in that team at all. I may have been overshooting on the losses though, but yeah, the Texans, they're the clear shot to win that division. They only got better this offseason, and I think they're only gonna continue to get better as the years go on. The Colts at 9-8, I think a lot of that depends on Anthony Richardson's health and how well Anthony Richardson actually does play if healthy. If he plays the way I think a lot of people think he has the potential to play. I could see the Colts having a better record than that and pushing into a wild card spot, especially if Jonathan Taylor is actually fully healthy and can have a bounce back season. I think some people are hoping that he will have. The Jaguars, I could see them being a lot better than this. I just wasn't really impressed with them in the second half of last year, and I'm not quite sure exactly what they did to get better this offseason. So I kind of have them floating around that 500 record, and then the Titans, obviously, I kind of touched on that. The AFC West, I think, no surprises here. Obviously, the Chiefs are going to win the AFC West and either be the number 1 or number 2 seed in the AFC. As of right now, I have them with the best record at 14-3. The Chargers I have in second at 10-7. The Raiders at 5-12, and the Broncos at 4-13. The Chargers, I think a lot of that depends on how well overall things go with the transition to Harbaugh. And if Herbert can stay healthy, I could see them having a lot better of a year and vying for kind of one of those last couple of wild card spots. The Raiders and Broncos, I think they're both really in similar places. They don't really have a ton going on for either of those teams. The Raiders obviously have that really impressive defensive line, but other than that, I don't think they have too much going on there. And the Broncos, I haven't understood a single move that Sean Payton has made since he started there. I don't think that they're better off without Russell Wilson. And I'm not a huge fan of Bo Nix personally, so I don't see them getting a lot done there.
All right. What we're going to do now, I've made the game time decision. We'll go conference by conference. So we're going to kick it over to Brett's predictions next. And we'll give him a chance. And so what I'll do is I'll put Brett's prediction side by side with Jay's. So for anybody watching at home, you can take a look at where they stack up here. I believe my screenshot for Brett includes some NFC stuff as well, but we'll ignore that. And Brett, we'll let you take the floor here, and let us know, what are you thinking here?
All right, so we'll start off with the AFC East. I got the Jets first place, winning the division at 11-6. Then the Dolphins follow them at a 10-7 record. Bills, I'm a little down on the Bills this year, just because they lost Stephon Diggs. And then news recently broke a few days ago that Matt Milano was going to be having surgery. And he's kind of like the key leader on that defense. They also lost a few other defensive players in free agency, so I think their defense is definitely going to take a step back. And then it's really just whether or not Josh Allen can get the best out of the rest of the offensive personnel that he has. So I don't have the Bills as a playoff team this year. They are 9-8, just above 500. And hopefully they do better than that, because I'm a huge Josh Allen fan, but I just don't have super high expectations for them. And then last place, I have the Patriots at 5-12. And that's the most that they wins that they could possibly get. I was probably being a little bit generous with that. This honestly is going to depend on whether or not Drake May comes in later on in the year. Because if it's just Jacoby all 17 games, it could be 3 or 4. But I'm operating under the assumption that Drake May comes in towards the end and they rattle off a couple at the end. Then we can go over to the AFC North. I feel like the Ravens at number 1 is like the safest option here. They literally got so much better adding Derrick Henry. And I'm excited to see what Lamar and Henry can do. 2 1,000-yard rushers potentially, so that should be really exciting. Steelers, I have the Steelers at 11-6. I really, really, really like the Steelers offseason. Jay kind of touched on it earlier. Like Justin Fields and Russell Wilson are very low risk, high reward type players. Adding Cordero Patterson, adding Patrick Queen. I like what they did in the draft. Uh, yeah, I'm really, really excited for the Steelers this season. Third place, I have the Bengals at 10-7. Not really much to say about the Bengals. They lost Joe Mixon, and I don't really like the replacement with Zach Moss. Their defense is kind of mediocre. Um, so we'll see what happens with their defense. If their defense can improve, then they have the opportunity to maybe surpass the Steelers. But for now, they're going to be 10-7. And then fourth place in the division is the Browns, 7-10. I don't have high hopes for the Browns really at all. And I'll just kind of leave it at that. Like I don't like any of their players. I don't really like Amari Cooper as a wide receiver one. And now he's like pissed off at the team because they were throwing him in trade conversations. So I don't know. I don't like the Browns. We'll move on to the AFC West. And the Chiefs are just going to roll this division like they always do. I got them at 12-5. They'll probably start off a little slow because that's normally how they start off the season. But by like week 4, week 5, they'll be like 100% like steaming. And yeah, I like some of the moves that they made in the offseason as well. Drafting Xavier Worthy, who had the quickest 40-yard dash in NFL history, and then adding in Hollywood Brown. Those are two good additions to a receiving core that really struggled last year with drops. Second place in the division, I have the Denver Broncos at 7-10. I'm a lot higher on Bo Nix than a lot of other people are. He was like a 4-year starter in college. So he has the most experience out of any of the rookie quarterbacks going into the league this year. And Sean Payton is probably the best quarterback for him. I'm pretty sure the Broncos had him number 1 on their board, which is insane to me, but they clearly really, really like Bo Nix. And I think the division outside of the Chiefs is pretty trash anyways. So these could kind of go any which way. Third place, I have the Chargers at 7-10. Yeah, they're kind of same thing with the Broncos. Like they didn't really do much this offseason. They got worse. They lost both of their top receivers. And we'll see what Harbaugh can get out of them, but 7-10 for right now. Last place, Raiders 6-11. Gardner Minshew and Aiden O'Connell, I think, are battling it out for the starting quarterback position, and whoever wins that job, it's not going to be pretty. They don't have any semblance of offense outside of Devontae Adams. They lost Josh Jacobs and brought in Alexander Madison. I think Zamir White is going to operate as their RB1. I don't really know how I feel about that because we haven't seen him with like RB1 touches yet. But I'm not optimistic about the Raiders. Moving on to the AFC South is the Texans at number 1, leading the division. Like Jay said, they literally did nothing but get better this year. They surprised a lot of people last year, and I don't think it'll be a surprise this year if they were to win the division. Then I have the Indianapolis Colts at 9-8, just hovering above 500. If Jonathan Taylor can stay healthy, the Colts could have a better record, but I don't know. It's very like wait and see approach for the Indianapolis Colts because we didn't really see Anthony Richardson play. He only played, I think, 4 games. So I need to see more of him before I can give the Colts like a 10 plus win prediction. And then Jaguars at 8-9. Jaguars didn't really do, I think they should have done a lot more than they did in the offseason. They had a lot of holes going into the second half of the season, like Jay said, and they just didn't really address any of those holes. And Gabe Davis, as like a kind of replacement to Calvin Ridley, we'll see how that goes. But I'm not a huge Gabe Davis fan, so it is what it is there. And then Titans, fourth place. I don't think they'll be as bad as Jay predicted, but 8-9 for them. I think their receiving core with D-Hop and Calvin Ridley is nice. Their running backs are nice. Levis should hopefully take like a second year leap. I'm not super big on Levis either, but I think with the personnel he has around him, he can only get better. I think they did bring in a new offensive line coach as well. He struggled a lot in the pocket. So hopefully with some better protection this year, he should be improved. And yeah, that's really all I have to say about the AFC.
All right. Thank you, Brett. Okay, what I'm going to do now is I guess we'll do mine next. We'll throw mine up and then I'll articulate a little bit. And then Kevin and Austin Specht, who were not here, submitted their own stuff. So we'll quickly go over those as well. So I'm going to throw mine on the screen here. This is what I came up with earlier today. I don't think we differ a whole lot between all of us, but let me fix this on my end over here. Okay. So in the AFC East, I realize I have the Jets number 2, but that's not what the record indicates. I wanted the Jets to be third. I just didn't list them right. So I have the Dolphins winning that division with an 11-5 record, Bills with a 10-7 record, Jets with 9-8, and I feel like I might be a little nice to them with that. I don't know if I believe in them even as much as you guys might. And then I have the Patriots at a 4-13 record. One thing that we haven't discussed, I don't know if you guys have taken a look, the Patriots schedule is horrific. It is a very difficult schedule, and that's not including the divisional matchups, of which we could just lose all 6 of them. All of the other games that we have this season, just like the whole slate it's not easy. Like, we start week 1 against Cincy, and it just continues downhill from there. So I even feel like I could see like a 3-14 season. It's a very difficult slate. I'm going to go ahead and just maybe articulate my points on which each team I think is going to win the division. I think the Dolphins are just, they're an offensive juggernaut, one of the best in the league, of course. I don't know if I really believe in them to make a deep playoff run yet, but in terms of regular season, coming off of, a very historic Tyreek Hill season, Tuo's re-signed, he's their guy. I think we're going to see, continued chemistry develop. Also, I realize that says 11-5 for the Dolphins. It should be 11-6. I don't know. I like the Dolphins. I think they're going to win out the division. I think the Bills got nerfed a little bit, obviously losing Diggs. So I think this is kind of where I think it's going to shake out. Transitioning to the AFC North. One of the more fun divisions to watch in the league. I have the Ravens winning the division with a 13-4 record, Bengals with a 12-5 record, Steelers with a 9-8 record, and the Browns at 7-10. The point has been made several times about the Ravens. They are potentially the best team on paper in the entire league that isn't the Kansas City Chiefs. And the 49ers, they've definitely, buffed up their offense with that Derrick Henry addition. There's no reason they don't win that division. The Bengals are known to kind of falter a bit in the regular season, so I don't necessarily see the Bengals edging out the Ravens until it comes time for the playoffs, and I think that's when things might start to get interesting. Quickly on the Steelers and Browns, I think we might see one of them hit a wild card spot. More than likely, my pick would be the Steelers. I have them getting a couple more wins this season. Also of note, Mike Tomlin has still never not had a losing season as a head coach. That tracks all the way from the beginning of his tenure, and I do think that's likely going to continue. He's obviously doing something right. He's got a veteran QB with Super Bowl experience and a new young project to work on. From the QB side of things, I think the Steelers are going to be just fine, kind of a mid-tier team. Transitioning to the AFC South, I have the Texans winning with a 12-5 record, Jaguars with 10-7. Now that I'm kind of talking about it, I'd bump that down a little bit, but I'll just continue with what I wrote down. Colts with an 8-9 record, Titans with a 5-12 record. There's no reason the Texans don't win this division should that team stay healthy. That offense on paper is also insane. I'm very excited to see CJ Stroud, coming off of his rookie season. If he takes another leap, he could just instantly be like a top 2 or 3 quarterback in the league, judging, he was already an MVP candidate. So that's just a very exciting team, and what a quick turnaround for them. I'm happy for Texans fans because it's been a very wild ride from the end of the Deshaun Watson era to now. So good for them. That's a very exciting team. They're obviously loading up. We saw breakout seasons from a couple of their other wide receivers. So, the sky kind of feels like the limit for them. Yeah, and then the other team I'll touch on quickly is the Colts. Kind of similar to what you guys are saying. I think Anthony Richardson could be exactly what people are thinking he is. He's that physical beast, like he's a specimen. And if he can stay healthy, along with the bits of what we were seeing from Jonathan Taylor when he finally did play last year, he was really having some fantastic games and looking to be the rushing champion that he was a few seasons ago. So for that reason, I think the Colts could be even a bit better than I'm predicting, but I'm kind of erring on the side of caution and giving them that 8-9 record. Finally, AFC West, no surprise to any of us here. I have the Chiefs winning that with a 14-3 record. I would maybe even bump that down to 13-4, but of course, they're going to be one of the top seeds. Chargers, I have 10-7. I feel like maybe we do have the right person to unlock Justin Herbert. Again, I'm not super familiar with Harbaugh, and I'm not going to pretend that I am, but I feel like a coach that just won a national championship is going to find a way to make that work. Losing Keenan Allen, losing Mike Williams, that doesn't help, but I don't know. I feel like that team will be better than maybe we're predicting. But if I also am totally wrong halfway through the season, I wouldn't be surprised either. So we'll keep an eye on that. We have the Las Vegas Raiders at 7-10. And the Denver Broncos at 5-12. So AFC West is kind of like, you got the Chiefs and then kind of a coin flip between the bottom 3 there. I could see any of those records being changed between any of those teams. But that's how I'm feeling. So what I'll do now is I will paste on Specs predictions and Kevin's, and then we'll just kind of compare how those shake out. So let me grab Specs over here. He also wrote some stuff here, so I'm gonna blow this up a little bit. So he picks the Bills 12-5, winning the AFC East, 11-6 for the Jets if Rodgers is healthy, 8-9 record for the Dolphins. I wish he was here to articulate that a bit more. And then 6-11 for the Pats. That's extremely generous. That's more generous than any of us. AFC North. You'll hear a little bit more about Specs' feelings on the Bengals. He's alluded to it in our group chat. He predicts them winning the AFC North with a 13-4 record and says Joe Burrow is back for fucking blood. The Browns with a 10-7, Steelers with an 8-9 record, and he has the Baltimore Ravens with a 9-8 record this season. He predicts. He is again not here to to expand on that, nor do I know the reasoning. And for those listening at home, this is not our opinion. We do not share this opinion. So if we remember at some point in the future podcast, we need to get him to air that. I don't know where that's coming from. 2-15 for the Titans from Jay is one thing, but I don't know. We'll see. Who knows? Maybe he knows something's going to happen to Lamar Jackson. Okay. AFC North, he has the Texans winning with a 12-5 record, followed by the Colts at 10-7, 9-8 for the Jags, and he writes sad next to it, and the Titans with a 6-11 record. AFC West, he's got the Chiefs winning with a 14-3 record, Chargers in second place with a 9-8 record, Raiders 5-12, Broncos 4-13. Okay. Finally, I'm going to move around this stuff on the screen a little bit so I can fit Kevin's over here. He is the final person from our panel who provided some predictions. There are no records here, but he did write them in order. And for those of you watching the stream, they are on the screen now. He's got in order for the AFC East, the Bills, followed by the Dolphins, Jets, and Patriots. AFC North, he's got the Ravens winning that division, followed by the Bengals, Steelers, and Browns. AFC South, he's got the Texans winning that division, followed by the Jaguars, Colts, and Titans. And then in the AFC West, he has the Chiefs winning, followed by the Raiders, the Chargers, and the Broncos. Okay, we have solved the AFC. These are all of the comparisons that we have here. For those of you watching the stream, they're all right in front of your eyes. So, take a good look at those. I think there are some things that we're all kind of unanimously agreeing on. Everybody picked the Chiefs to win the AFC West. Everybody picked the Texans to win the AFC South. AFC North, we all have the Ravens, with the exception of Specs, who picked the Bengals, which is fine, but it's just where he placed the Ravens at 9-8 is a little questionable. We do deviate a little bit as well. We actually picked all but the Patriots collectively to win the division. We have 2 votes for the Dolphins, 2 for the Bills, and 1 for the Jets. So AFC is looking kind of spicy this season. There's a couple of teams that are definitely question marks. Ironically, I think the most interesting division, the most fun to watch, is going to be the AFC East. It's just unfortunate the Patriots do not have a seat at that table, like whatsoever. They're just kind of free wins to buff the other teams. But who knows? Like, there's kind of a fun storyline in place where maybe the Patriots play spoiler and they do get that one win against like the Dolphins or the Jets or something, and that kind of alters the playoff scenario. So we'll see. Any final thoughts from either of you guys on the AFC side of things before we transition out?
I just think Specht is like really glazing Joe Burrow. And it's pretty obvious. I also think the Bills, like a lot of you guys said, the Bills first place in the AFC East. That could theoretically happen. I wouldn't be shocked if it did. I just don't know how they're going to win that division with some of the subtractions taken from that team. And it seems like the Jets and Dolphins are both getting better. So with that being said, and with those 2 teams getting better, Bills getting worse, I don't know.
Yeah, I could see a situation where any of those 3 teams wins the division, but as of right now, I think I favor the Dolphins over the Jets or Bills.
All right. So we're going to transition to the NFC. We will return to the AFC right at the end of the podcast. We'll kind of quickly go over playoff predictions, championship game matchups in the Super Bowl. But until then, we are, like I said, going to transition to NFC predictions. Just for the sake of switching things up a little bit, we're going to let Brett go first this time around. So give me a second from the stream end of things to hide all of these predictions, and we'll go ahead and kick off with Brett here. So let me switch this over to your other set over here. Hopefully I cropped this correctly. No, I'm gonna have to fix this. So Brett, why don't you go ahead and start us off with your NFC East, and I'll fix this on the visual end for everybody watching.
All right. So starting with the NFC East, I have the Eagles winning the NFC East with a 11-6 record. I think with all the they lost their offensive and defensive coordinators, plus a lot of new players on the team with Saquon and a few defensive players being added. So I think they're going to start the season off slow, and then towards middle of the season, they'll really start to pick up those wins. But this is a pretty easy division for them. They seem to kind of dominate this division easily. So I don't think this year will be. And then I have the Cowboys at 10-7. They usually always challenge the Eagles. Towards the end, there's usually those 1 or 2 games that could determine whether or not the Eagles or Cowboys win the division. But we all know the Cowboys is the biggest chokers in the entire league, so that trend will just continue until I die, probably. Third place is the Giants. This is probably going to be controversial for a lot of people. I know Specht was giving me a hard time in the chat earlier, saying Giant or like why aren't your predictions the same as mine? I think he had Commanders at third, but Giants are gonna surprise people in the sense that Daniel Jones will hopefully be healthy and play a full season. Not that I think Daniel Jones is anything good, but better than Tyrod Taylor and some of like Tommy DeVito and some of the guys that they were rolling out last year. Um, they did lose Saquon, but I think that might be a good thing for them, considering the fact that they literally ran their offense around one person, and that one person is a running back. Um, you can't do that in today's NFL. Hopefully now it seems like they drafted Malik Neighbors. They got a lot of young receivers. They can make some noise with those receivers plus their defensive line. I really really like. So 7-10 from them, and then Commanders at 6-11. I don't think the Commanders have the defense to be anything better. They pretty much traded all their defensive, like good defensive players away during the deadline last year. And they're in like a hard rebuild, similar to like where the Patriots are right now. So it's going to be a while before um, they'll be in contention for playoffs. Uh, Moving on to the NFC North, I have the Packers at 13-4. Um, I am very, very, very big on the Packers this year. Um, and you guys will know what I mean later on when we go through playoffs. But yeah, the addition of Josh Jacobs, Jordan Love looked really, really good last year, and I'm like a huge Jordan Love believer. I think this year he'll be able to expand on what he did last year. And they also improved their secondary, which was one of their big weaknesses last year as well. So uh, it's going to be close between them and the Lions. I have the Lions at 12-5, so one win shy of the Packers record. Uh, and this will probably come down to like the last week of the season, I think. Um, it could go either way, but as of right now, I have the Packers kind of right above them. And then in third place, I have the Vikings at 8-9. I think Sam Darnold will be better than a lot of people anticipate him being. And they still have Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison. They have Hawkinson, I think, will miss the first few weeks coming back from off-season surgery, but Vikings should be fine if they can stay healthy, which has always been an issue with them. And then last place is the Bears at 7-10. Uh, the Bears will be a better team than they were last year, but I still think with the young group that they have, it's going to take a while for them to be a playoff contender. Uh, Moving on to the NFC West, I have the 49ers first place at 13-4. Uh, I'm assuming that Brandon Ayuk is just going to stay with the 49ers because it kind of seems like where we're headed right now. And if he does, I really, really think that they could finish with the best record in the NFC. We'll tie with the best record in the NFC with Green Bay Packers. Looking forward to what they have in store this year. Second place, I have the New Orleans Saints. This might be a little bias out of me, considering I'm a Saints fan. But I do like what the Saints did. They replaced their offensive coordinator, and they did add Chase Young to their pass rush, which should be a great addition there. And yeah, we'll see what happens with the Saints. Them and the Buccaneers were like the two hardest teams for me to predict record wise. Uh, I think the Buccaneers could very well surpass the Saints, but I have them at 7-10. I'm not really sure how I feel about Rashad White, especially. He had like a breakout season last year. And is this like what Rashad White is, or was that just like a fluke? Um, I'm not really sure. So right now I'm gonna go 7-10 for them, and then in last place is the Panthers at 5-12. I don't think Bryce Young is a starting quarterback in the NFL. Based off what I saw last year, he should not have been the number one overall pick, let alone he shouldn't have been a first round pick, let alone the number one overall pick. Um, so they seriously misevaluated him, and they traded away Brian Burns. Like I don't know what they're doing, to be honest with you. But yeah, I don't think the Panthers will finish any higher than 5 wins this year.
All right. We are now going to kick it over to Jay, and we'll let you go ahead and give your articulations now. So I have your predictions up on the screen.
Yeah, so
Let's hear it.
just really quick, I think I'm starting to realize when I hate a team, I kind of really hate them. Looking
Yeah.
at some of these records. So starting out with the NFC East, I have the Eagles winning the division pretty easily at 12-5. I think overall, they're the most complete team in that division, one of the more complete teams in the conferences. They picked up Saquon Barkley this offseason. I could see them being a little bit slow out of the gate. So, they don't have Jason Kelsey anymore since he retired. But overall, I think that they put together another really good season and win that division. The Cowboys, they have it 9-8. I could see them maybe being a game better or a game worse than this. I don't have high expectations for them. I really don't think they're ever gonna win a Super Bowl with Dak Prescott. Yeah, not super high on them. They still have one of the best defensive players in the league with Parsons, but and they have CD Lamb as well, who I think is he still currently in his holdout.
As of right now, yeah, I think there's
Yeah,
still some stuff going
I
on there.
assume he'll probably be in the lineup week 1, but other than really kind of him and Parsons, they don't have too much going for them that excites me. So I kind of got them floating around that 500 record. The Commanders I have actually as the same record as Brett, just over the Giants. So I have the Commanders at 6-11 as well. I think that they have a few things going for them. They picked up Jaden Daniels. I think there is a lot of potential there in that team, but it's going to take a few years for them to kind of see that payoff. And then the Giants, I have at 1-16. They could be. I think that they might actually be a little bit better than this. I think Brett convinced me a little bit. I think it could be interesting to see what they might be able to do now that they're not fully relying on Saquon Barkley. They might actually get a little bit better as a result of losing him, which sounds kind of crazy to say, but I could see that actually happening. But yeah, Daniel Jones, I'm not super high on, and overall, I don't think that team has a lot going for them. The NFC North, I have the Lions winning the division in a very tight race with the Packers. I have the Lions at 13-4. I think they have one of the more complete teams in the league. My biggest question mark in terms of their overall ability to win a Super Bowl, I think, is just how well Jared Goff plays down the line for them and can play for them in the playoffs. I think Amon-Ra St. Brown is great. They have a really good running back tandem going on there. I think they still have David Montgomery, right? And then obviously
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah.
Gibbs. So I think they have one of the better running back rooms in the NFL. I think Aiden Hutchinson probably continues to take another step up and really kind of cement himself at the front of that defensive line. And yeah, overall, I think I could see them eking out the NFC conference over the 49ers going into the playoffs as the number 1 seed. Then I have the Packers at 12-5. I also really, really like this Packers team. I think Jordan Love is a legit top 10 quarterback in the NFL right now, if not higher. I think overall that team is great and really well equipped, I think, to make a deep run this year. The Bears I have at 7-10 as well. I think they are going to be better than last year. I could see them being even better than that. I think it all really just kind of depends on how well Caleb Williams can settle down into the NFL and how well he can play in his first year. The Vikings, I have them at 2-15, which I mean it might be a
Yes,
little bit
sir.
insane because they do still have Justin Jefferson. But I think I have just a lot of core memories watching Sam Darnold throwing to ghosts out there against the Patriots. And I'm just not a huge believer in him. But because he is a few years removed from being a New York Jet, and he could be a little bit better than the Sam Darnold that we used to see twice a year. So they might be a little bit better than that, but I'm not a huge fan of that team. Um, Going to the NFC South, I have the Falcons winning that division at 9-8. I could see them being a little bit better than that. I think it all kind of depends on how things go. I think especially see how far Kirk Cousins can get them. And I know I kind of touched on it earlier. I don't know if Kirk Cousins is the kind of guy who can get you a Super Bowl, but I do think he can get them that division win. And I know their new head coach said that he plans on absolutely feeding Bijan Robinson. So see how well that overall goes and see how good Bijan is getting that level of low that level of a load. Um, and then I have the Buccaneers also at 9-8. I think the Buccaneers are just overall a mediocre average team, so I have them floating around that 500 mark. The Saints I have at 7-10. I think that they're kind of interesting. Derek Carr got a little hot at the end of the year. I think if he can play more how he did towards the end of the year, I could see the Saints making a potential push to pu- push towards the top of that division. And then the Panthers, I have at 1-16 as well. I don't think they did anything to get better. I really agree. I'm not a huge believer in Bryce Young. I don't think he can really make that step up as long as he is in a Panthers uniform, and I don't think they did anything to get better. I have them winning one less game than last year. And then finally, my NFC West, I have the 49ers winning that division. I think that's a pretty clear cut and obvious thing right now. At this point, I agree. I think Ayuk probably stays put with the 49ers for now. And so long as they have Ayuk, a healthy McCaffrey, and a healthy Debo Samuel, you have three really, really great playmakers there to go along with one of the best defenses in the NFL. I have the Rams at 10-7. I think especially if they can be healthier than they were last year, they could continue to take another step up if Cup can stay healthy, if Stafford can stay healthy, really have a pretty strong offense there, I think, with Cup, Puka Nakua, Kyron Williams, Matthew Stafford. I think there's a lot of things to be excited about there. The defense will be interesting as we're entering into that post Aaron Donald phase. He's no longer going to be terrorizing. Right, right. Aaron Donald retired, right? I'm not making that up in my head. Okay,
Yep.
perfect. Yeah, so he's not going to be terrorizing opposing quarterbacks and opposing offensive lines anymore. So I'll be interested to see how the Rams defense overall adjusts to not having Aaron Donald anymore. The Cardinals, I'm a big fan of. They brought in Marvin Harrison Jr. into their wide receiver room. I think if overall they can stay healthy, they might be a little bit better than this, but I'm not quite overall as optimistic about them. So I have them at 8 and 9, along with the Seahawks at 8 and 9. I think the Seahawks are a better team than their record says. I just think that division is a really brutal division to be playing in. So yeah, that's overall how I have my NFC playing out.
All right. So noted. I will never get you a Giants, Titans, Vikings, or Panthers jersey.
Yep.
I think out of all of those, the Titans one is still the most like, I don't know. Okay. I'm gonna switch over to myself now, and then we'll close out with Kevin and Specs NFC predictions, and then we'll close out the whole show this evening with our playoff matchups and end of season awards if we want to do those as well. So I'm gonna go ahead and show my NFC predictions over here. So mine are next to Jay's. So the NFC East, I have a tight race between the Eagles and the Cowboys. 13-4 for the Eagles, winning the division. 12-5 record for the Cowboys, followed by a 5-12 record respectively for the Giants and the Commanders. Yeah, I'm a big fan of Jalen Hurts. I'm a big fan of the Eagles. You'll see when we get to our playoff predictions, I do have the Eagles making it, decently far this season. I think adding Saquon Barkley, I think I gave him like a B or a B plus was the highest I said I would go. We'll see. I mean, I could probably end up being wrong there, and we'll see him back to his rookie form. And if he happens to be able to flourish in that same way, that Eagles offense is unbelievable. And again, it's right now to compete in this league at a high level, you have to be good on both sides of the ball. And the Eagles are definitely one of those teams right now. So, moving on to the NFC North, I also, too, like the Packers, and I also have them winning the division along with Brett. Something about the Lions, I don't want to call them a 1 to 1.5 season wonder, kind of going back to 2022. The NFC Championship berth was awesome. There are still some question marks on, can they really make that push in the same way that some other teams in this conference are kind of equipped to do? If they end up winning the division, I also wouldn't be surprised. But I think when it comes to offseason additions, I would definitely give the Packers a higher grade than the Lions. So it'll be interesting to see how those records shake out. And it'll especially be nice to see those divisional matchups between the two. Those are going to be some of the more fun games this season, I think. So then I have the Vikings at 7-10 and the Bears at 6-11. The Vikings, I think, I could drop that by a couple wins. It really just depends on if Sam Darnold's ready to answer the call. I know earlier in a group chat today, we were kind of talking about rumors might be floating around that the Vikings might be eyeing Derek Carr. I don't know how substantiated those rumors are, but if they do happen to add Derek Carr, we could see the Vikings surge up to maybe 9-ish wins this season. When you have Justin Jefferson to throw to at a minimum, I mean, you're going to win a couple of games just off the merit of that. So, and then the Bears, I'm very intrigued at what they're doing. If Caleb Williams proves to have a rookie season, is the outlier the way that like a CJ Stroud was, we could see the Bears take home a couple more wins because that offense is rather loaded. So it's just a matter of, can Caleb Williams kind of get rid of those growing pains quickly and maximize that? That remains to be seen. So I'm kind of being more cautious and giving them a 6-win season as of right now. So similar to you guys. NFC South is also a super fun division to keep an eye on. I have the Falcons winning that with 11-6 record, coming off the heels of all these offseason, changes that they've made. We mentioned Bijan Robinson, I think, is going to probably take a pretty massive leap this season as well. So, we'll see. It's kind of a Hail Mary for them. I do think the NFC South is probably the hardest division to predict in the entire league right now. And I think that's kind of it's going to be fun to see that shake out. Buccaneers, I mentioned earlier, I like the Baker Mayfield. They wrapped him up on a contract. They re-signed Mike Evans as well. They're coming back to run it again. I think 10-7 is a bit generous, and I'll recognize that. But I think at the very least, we might see a wild card out of them potentially. And I have the Saints at 10-7 as well. I'm not as big of a believer in the Saints. like on paper, but I do think that they have right now their team in its current form, if healthy, can contend, especially in the division that they're in. So 10-7 might be also generous for the Bucks and or for the Saints rather, along with the Bucks, but I kind of like both teams just for what they're offering. Finally, the NFC West. There's honestly some interesting teams in this division, but I'm going to also go with the 49ers, of course, to win. You can make a case for them as the most complete team in football, just coming off of another Super Bowl appearance. So, the easy money is to put it on the 49ers to win it all, and in that division, that is. Seahawks, I have a 10-7. I'm a fan of that team. I'm a fan of Geno Smith. I love that storyline. I'm being very generous with 10 wins, but I think they got something going over there, and they're just a fun team to root for. Again, just given Geno Smith's history. I have the Rams at 9-8. I think they're a solid team. I think Stafford's starting to get a little old, so it's just a matter of, will his wide receiving core stay healthy? Is he going to be able to maximize that? Is Kyron Williams going to take an even larger leap now that he's kind of turned out to be a stud? So if Stafford can keep up with the young guys around him, that team could be very good just based off of its offense alone, but that remains to be seen. And then the Cardinals, I have at 6-11. They're an exciting team. I'm a Kyler Murray enjoyer, and I think now that he's coming back to, actually play a full season, he's got some talent. Obviously coming in, and Marvin Harrison. Very interested to see what he ends up doing with Marvin. If they can get that chemistry going, they're just going to be some very fun games. But I don't think I think they're overall the weakest team in that division as of right now, until we see a little bit more of what they're going to do offensively together. So from there, we're going to transition to, we'll go with Kevin's next. So let me put his up on the screen. We'll move this over here. Again, Kevin did not provide records because he did this in a flash, but in the NFC East, he's got the Eagles winning the division, followed by the Cowboys, Commanders, and Giants. So he agrees with all of us. NFC, he went with the NFC South next. He picked the Bucks to win that division, followed by the Falcons, Saints, and Panthers. NFC North, he picked the Lions to win, followed by the Packers, Vikings, and Bears. And then finally, the NFC West, he's got the Niners winning that division, followed by the Rams, Seahawks, and Cardinals. Okay. And that brings us to our final set of division predictions from our friend Specht over here. Again, he is not here to articulate these points. He has one comment here. He has, for the NFC North, he kicks us off. He has the Packers winning that division, 12-5 record. He says, "Go Pack, go baby." And then he has the Lions with 11-6 record. He gives the Bears the highest record prediction with a 9-8. So he's definitely a believer in what they've got going on over there. And then Minnesota with a 6-11 record. NFC East, he also has the Eagles winning, but with only 11 wins, so similar to what Brett was predicting. Followed by the Cowboys with a 10-7 record, Commanders 4-13, and the Giants with a 2-5 record. NFC North, Specht has the Falcons winning that division with a 10-7 record, followed by the Bucks with 7-10, and he has the Panthers and the Saints both with a 5-12 record. I also realized I don't think I talked about the Panthers, but I had them at 4-13, and yeah, I that's probably I don't like Bryce Young, so I agree with everybody else here. Finally, NFC West, he has the 49ers winning that division with a 12-5 record, with the Rams at a 10-7, Cardinals at 7-10, and a Seahawks at 6-11. Okay, so we have concluded the NFC. Going across the board here, some trends that we're seeing. We all have the Eagles winning the NFC East. We all have the Cowboys in second place in that division. We all have the Falcons winning. Nope, that is incorrect. We all, but one person, have the Falcons winning the NFC South. We all have the 49ers winning the NFC North, West rather. NFC North, we differ a little bit. We have a couple of votes for the Packers and a couple of votes for the Lions. So, I mean, overall, I think generally slightly easier divisions to pick than the AFC. But I think my takeaway from what we're all writing down here is that there are a lot of, like, I feel like the bottom half, like the bottom tier of the league is not so bad. Like, I feel like there's a lot of teams that are at least mediocre and up. Like, there's a lot of teams that, you could sneak into the playoff picture. So I'm pretty excited for, seeing where all this shakes out. Any final thoughts from you guys on the NFC or just anything that we've noticed here?
Yeah, just real quick. Oh, my beats might die. But I think I was definitely the highest on the Rams. And I think the Rams have the potential to finish with the number one ranked offense in the league. I seriously think that they have that potential with Kyron Williams, Puka, Cop. If like all three of them can stay healthy, that's going to be a very dangerous offense. So I'm really excited about them. And then, like you said, like the bottom half of the NFC, like really isn't that bad. I mean, Arizona, like will probably finish last place in their division, but they're gonna be a pretty solid team with Kyler Murray, James Conner, add in Marvin Harrison Jr. They're not going to be bad. They'll probably hover around 500, which is like I have them at 8-9. But that's like probably the best outcome for them.
All right, Jay, any stuff you want to offer before we wrap up with predictions?
Yeah, I think the kind of middle half of the NFC is really exciting, and I think we could see a lot of possibilities play out. I think just kind of looking across the board at the NFC North of our predictions play out, I think that's going to be a really, really fun to watch and really interesting division race there between the Lions and the Packers.
Agreed. All right. So the final thing we'll do on the show this evening is we're just going to quickly go over predictions for at least our conference championship matchups, and then just quickly talk about Super Bowl. And then if you want to get spicy and throw out some early award predictions, we can do that. And we'll wrap up for the evening. So the way that we'll do this is I'm going to transition over to this other screen on the podcast over here. And then I didn't get a written submission from everybody on their predictions for playoffs and so forth. So what I'll have you guys do is we'll just start with Jay for this. And you can either tell me all of your playoff matchups or just like your two conference championships in your Super Bowl, and just kind of talk about that quickly, and then we'll go from there. So however you want to do this, Jay, you tell me, and we'll go ahead and let you have the floor.
Sure. So I kind of have it all written down, but I'm just going to stick to the conference championships and the Super Bowl matchup. I think that makes the most sense. So
Okay, we'll
my
all do that then.
AFC conference championship matchup that I have, I have it being a rematch of, I think, the most exciting game going into week one. I have the Chiefs versus the Ravens, and what I think is going to be a really amazing conference championship game. I personally have the Chiefs winning that game and being the AFC representative in the Super Bowl. I think the Ravens right now might have the better overall roster, but in playoff time, there's just Patrick Mahomes is already the best player in the league, but he just somehow takes that to an even higher level in the playoffs. And no matter the deficit that he seems to face, he always tends to get it done. And I really can't see a scenario where the Chiefs aren't the AFC representative in the Super Bowl this year. And then in the NFC, I have the Lions and the Eagles facing off in the conference championship game. And I am super high on the Lions this year. I have them winning that game and going to the Super Bowl. I think that's going to be a really tight game, and I think a lot of things have to go really right for the Lions to actually make the Super Bowl. Jared Goff, I think, has to take things to a whole nother level for that to happen. I think he has to really, really prove that he can play in the playoffs and in tight games like that. But yeah, I have a Chiefs versus Lions Super Bowl matchup.
Who
Do
you
you want
got
me
winning?
to?
Let's hear it. That's so
Um,
spicy.
So this is actually probably is really spicy again. I have the Lions winning that matchup. I
Whoa!
I picked the Lions as my Super Bowl champions, and maybe I'm huffing a little bit of copium here, but I think the Lions could beat the Chiefs. kind of in similar fashion to how they did in Week 1 last year. That may have been more of a case of the Chiefs being a little slow out the gate, but something just feels magical about the Lions this year to me, and I think that they could get it done and win the Super Bowl this year.
I love it. That's not what I picked, but like, yeah, why not? You know?
It'd be
Yeah.
a cool story.
It really would. Their first Super Bowl win, and somehow joining the ranks of being able to beat Patrick Mahomes in the playoffs.
Yep.
It's gonna, like I said, a lot of things are gonna have to go right for them. I think there's just something magical about the Lions this year.
All right, Brett, let's kick it over to you. Let's just hear your conference championship matchups in your Super Bowl.
Okay. So for the AFC, me and Jay actually have the same like two teams, Baltimore versus Kansas City. However, I picked Baltimore to win that game, and I don't have like great reasoning as to why I picked Baltimore. Um, but like I don't know. I think Kansas City, they're bound to like lose a big game eventually. Um, and I think this is the year that they said big game. Uh, they've gotten very, very lucky the past couple playoff seasons. They've won a lot of like really close games. And I think the addition of Derrick Henry just kind of pushes the Ravens like slightly ahead of Kansas City this year. So I got the Ravens going to the Super Bowl. And then in the NFC, I have the Green Bay Packers against the San Francisco 49ers. I think two like just historic, prestigious franchises in the NFC Championship game is just like good for football. And it's very much stated in this podcast how excited I am for Jordan Love this season. I really think he has the potential to be a top 5 quarterback this year. And I just love the addition of Josh Jacobs and their young receivers in Christian Watson, Romeo Dobbs, and Jaden Reed. So I think I have them in the NFC Championship game against San Francisco, and I have them beating San Francisco. It will be a very, very close game. But I think Jordan Love ultimately gets one on Brock Purdy. I don't trust Brock Purdy in big games yet, and that's my biggest like reason why I don't have them winning is because he just hasn't proven himself in those big games yet, and I need to see that from him before I can put him in the Super Bowl. Even though he's been there already, I don't see it happening this year. So I have Green Bay versus Baltimore. And my Super Bowl winner is going to be Baltimore.
Okay.
I think this is the year for them. I really do.
All right. I'll go ahead and throw out my predictions. So I actually match up with both of you guys. I have the Kansas City and Baltimore AFC Championship game. I don't think anything changes. I think Mahomes' prime is coming into that game, and they're just going to win again. Like, there's a three-peat at stake here. There's never been a three-peat in the history of the NFL, and the Chiefs are in a position to do it. Like, Mahomes would have to die on the field than lose a game, I feel like. So I don't know. I like the Ravens, and if there was ever a Ravens team that is loaded up in the correct way to defeat the Kansas City Chiefs, it's this Ravens team right now. But the Chiefs now have a good defense to match the offense. They've made a rather big addition in bringing in Marquise Brown. I think that team just loaded up and ready to go. I have the Chiefs winning that AFC Championship game. On the other side, I have the NFC Championship game, and I've got the 49ers versus the Philadelphia Eagles. I think those are just the two titans of the NFC. I know the Lions made it there last year, but I don't have a reason to doubt the Eagles. at this point, given the offseason addition that they brought to the running back position. Assuming health, this just seems like the obvious choice to me for the NFC Championship game. However, I'm a big 49ers person. They just feel like the right team in the NFC right now. Maybe I'm a little biased, maybe because I've been watching Receiver on Netflix and I've just been watching Kittle and Debo, and I'm super into both of them right now. And I don't know, they were going into last season and they were like, this is our year, and I know they're going to bring that same energy. And it's not like, the Eagles aren't doing this either, but I have the 49ers winning, and I have a Super Bowl rematch predicted for 2025. We have the Chiefs versus the 49ers, and in a game in which they win and seal the three-peat, I do have the Kansas City Chiefs winning the Super Bowl. It's hard. Like I don't know if there's a reason to bet against them right now, given, there's a chance that pressure in setting history in a three-peat fashion gets to them and they collapse in some way during the playoffs. But maybe Mahomes, 4 or 5 years ago, if he was in a position to three-peat, may have, not made it all the way through. But he's entering his prime. As long as he's got a pulse, we got to treat him like Tom Brady, and they can win literally any game if he's playing. And I don't know. I think the Chiefs are a team of destiny this season. Jay thinks the Lions are a team of destiny, and I respect that. I'm just trying to maybe I like the history of it too much, and I like the idea of there being a three-peat because it's never happened. It seems so insurmountable, and so that's what I got. I got the Chiefs. I'm not proud of it, but that's what I got.
It's probably the smartest pick, if I'm being honest. It's probably the Chiefs to win the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
I'm sure, if we looked at Vegas odds, I'm sure Kansas City probably has the best.
Yeah, plus you got that Taylor Swift buff. I don't know, man. I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but okay. So we didn't get any playoff predictions from Kevin, to my knowledge, but I do have a screenshot from Spect that I'll put on the bottom right of the screen that articulates his points. So let me throw this up on the screen for those of you watching, but I will read this out loud also for the benefit of those listening with audio. So we're going to go ahead and go to the AFC side of things. And so Spect lays out all of his matchups. So I'll just read it verbatim. He does also mention divisional and so forth, but he has the Bengals beating the Colts in the playoffs, and the Texans beating Cleveland in the playoffs. And then he has the Jets beating the Bills in Buffalo to just really add to the cursed history. And then from there, he has the Bengals defeating the Texans to go to the AFC Championship game, and he has the Jets in the divisional round against the Chiefs, and the Chiefs win that game. So the AFC Championship game is, in Spec's mind, the Bengals versus the Kansas City Chiefs, and in quote, the game of the century, the Bengals beat the Chiefs in the AFC Championship game a la 2021 or 22 and punched their ticket back to the Super Bowl.
Blazing.
And from the other side of things, on the NFC side, he has the 49ers beating the Rams, although he went back and forth on this one. So he says the Eagles defeat the Cowboys, the Lions smack Atlanta, Green Bay beats the Lions, San Fran beats the Eagles, and that brings us to a San Francisco versus Packers NFC Championship game, and he has the 49ers winning the NFC Championships, which sets up a Super Bowl matchup between the Bengals and the 49ers, and this is verbatim. Specht says, since he beats San Fran in the Super Bowl, I really think Joe Burrow is back for a straight-up revenge tour. If him and Chase stay healthy, I think they're going to have a monster year. And so Specht has the Cincinnati Bengals winning the Super Bowl. And so that concludes. We have a pick for the Chiefs. We have a pick for the Lions, right, Jay?
Yep.
We have a pick for the Ravens from Brett and a pick for the Bengals. So we have only one NFC team being considered to win, and that's the Lions. Between the four of us who predicted. So, overall, we'll switch it over to Brett. We'll let you have some closing statements here on everything that we just discussed related to the playoffs. How are you feeling right now?
I'm feeling good, at least about you guys' predictions. Like I could see those things happening. Really, I guess like I just have a problem with Speck's opinion. So like Cincinnati,
Oh,
like he doesn't. I don't know if like he just hasn't been following like what's been going on in the off season, but T Higgins didn't get his contract. He signed the franchise tag, but he is operating on a 1 year deal this year. And if he's even like the slightest bit hurt, he's not going to go out there. He's not going to play and risk injury and then not getting his massive contract in the offseason. Same with Jamar Chase. He wants this big monster deal as well. He sees all the other receivers getting paid and he says, I want that too. And rightfully so. He's one of the top 3 receivers in the league. So I think those two receivers like not getting paid yet frightens me as a Bengals fan because they're not gonna like risk potential injury for the Cincinnati Bengals.
all right. We'll make sure that that message is relayed to him.
Oh, I'm sure he's listening.
All right, Jay, let's hear some thoughts from you on kind of this whole playoff prediction piece.
Yeah, I mean, I really like all of our picks. I think besides Specs here, I think we all had the Chiefs and Ravens matching up in the AFC Championship game. I really do think that's going to be a really fun game to watch, and I obviously I think the Chiefs are going to come out with it, but I do see this scenario where the Ravens could win and wind up going on to win the Super Bowl. I think if they can get an early lead going there, and then just kind of run the ball down Kansas City's throats, I think could see a scenario where Baltimore winds up winning that game. I do really like that we all have different picks here, and I could see all of them happening. I think I'd have to agree, though, maybe not the Cincy pick. Yeah, that's kind of how I'm feeling overall about these picks.
I could forgive it all if like Spec doesn't even have the Ravens in the playoff picture. Period. Like we just need to
Yeah. I
also
need
acknowledge that. What do you
Because
say?
I picked them to win the Super Bowl. So like, is he like just assuming Lamar's gonna be injured and like they're not gonna make it, or like I would love some insight on why he doesn't have Baltimore.
Yeah, if nothing else, we'll have him explain at some point live on air and just see, because like we've had some spicy takes. I've made some stupid predictions. I think we've all done that at some point. But that I think that's the biggest head scratcher of them all is like not even the Ravens making it to like a conference title game, but like the Browns are gonna make it, you know, and not the Ravens. So I'm very curious to see where his head's at there.
Yeah,
but
I think unless like both Lamar and Derrick Henry get hurt in week 1 and miss the rest of the season, I don't see a scenario where Baltimore doesn't like even at least make the playoffs.
Yep. Yeah. Well, you heard it here first. I guess the Ravens aren't making the playoffs, according to one of our co-panelists here. But yeah, to end this part on a good note, it is encouraging at least that all of us are picking different teams to win the Super Bowl. It says something about the quality of the teams in the NFL right now, that even though there is a team that is a back-to-back champion, there are various teams that, like, if they were to win the Super Bowl this season, wouldn't feel wrong or feel like a major upset either. So there's an interesting level of parity right now that I feel like the NFL has been lacking recently, especially coming like from the Patriots dynasty era. You know, things don't really quite seem like a foregone conclusion once you get into the playoff season. So it's a good time to be a football fan, and I'm glad that we're back in it finally and talking about it. Um, we'll conclude the show this evening with some very quick award predictions, and just kind of rattling off real rapid fire who we think is going to win, kind of like some of the more major awards. So I personally wrote down MVP, Defensive Player of the Year, Offensive Player of the Year, and Offensive Rookie of the Year. I didn't write Defensive Rookie because I'm not going to pretend like I know any of the defensive rookies coming in. So, we'll see. So I'll kick us off. We'll go to Jay, we'll go to Brett, and then Spect has some predictions as well. And I think it's only fitting that we end on his because the insanity doesn't quite end there. So for myself, I have the MVP of the 2024 NFL season being Patrick Mahomes. I have the Defensive Player of the Year as TJ Watt. I have the Offensive Player of the Year as Tyreek Hill, a repeat performance. And I have the Offensive Rookie of the Year as Marvin Harrison Jr. Jay, do you have any predictions to share with us?
Perfect. Yeah, for NFL MVP, I have CJ Stroud this year.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, at Offensive Player of the Year, I have Bijan Robinson. Defensive Player of the Year, I have Micah Parsons. And similarly, at Offensive Rookie of the Year, I have Marvin Harrison Jr.
All right. Brett, what do you got for us?
All right. So Offensive Player of the Year, I got my boy Tyreek Hill. Defensive Player of the Year, I don't know when the last time a corner has won it, but I got Sauce Gardner.
Oh, okay.
Ooh,
that's spicy.
Offensive Rookie of the Year, I feel like the easy choice is Marvin Harrison Jr., but I'm going to go Malik Neighbors from the Giants.
Nice.
I think just because the Giants' offense is so bad that Malik Neighbors will just eat up all the volume, and he'll get like a majority of those votes just by default. So yeah, I got Neighbors as Offensive Rookie of the Year, and then my MVP is Jordan Love.
Wow.
Yeah,
I love that pick. No pun intended.
Hey, I mean, like, I don't hate it. I really don't. I thought I thought I would, but like I could see that happening. We could see that like an even larger leap. So I mean, go Packers. Let's go, baby.
Go Packers.
Okay, and we will finish off our rapid fire award predictions with Specs. I'll be putting that on the bottom right of the screen for those with video. He is glazing the Bengals further. He has Joe Burrow winning the MVP. Offensive Player of the Year, Jamar Chase. TJ Watt, Defensive Player of the Year. Marvin Harrison Jr. As the Offensive Rookie of the Year. He has Dallas Turner as the Defensive Rookie of the Year. I don't know who that is, and I, again, will not pretend that I do. Is he good? How are we feeling about that, Brett? Do you have any idea?
He's from Alabama. I think he was like the second or third defensive player taken in the draft.
Okay.
He's a defensive end, I think, on the Vikings, if I remember correctly. He has a chance to be good and replace the production that Danielle Hunter, who just went to Houston.
Mm-hmm.
He has a chance to replace at least like a majority of that production. He's a stud from Alabama. We'll see what happens with him if he can like be more consistent, because that was like his biggest red flag going into the draft was just like his consistency. But I could see it happening.
All right. You heard it here first. We like Dallas Turner, people. And finally, the very last word on this podcast gets to be from Spect in terms of predictions. He's predicting Sam Darnold is going to win the Comeback Player of the Year award. Coming back from what? Not too sure. He is very high on the Vikings situation. So we'll see. We'll see. The two takeaways is that Spect hates the Ravens and he loves the Bengals this season. So we'll revisit these things, I'm sure, a bit later into the season, and we'll see who gets the last laugh, or at least the middle of the season laugh. From there, we'll wrap up now. It's definitely been a juggernaut of a stream in a podcast, so I appreciate everybody who's either watching live, listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts at this point, and of course Brett and Jay for for coming so well prepared. I think we had some really good conversations. We'll kind of conclude with final thoughts if you guys want to share any. Jay, do you have anything that you want to say kind of about the season ahead, or whatever's on your mind right now?
Yeah, nothing. Nothing that I don't think we've covered. I think if we want to see, as Patriots fans, them go fully tank, let's start Bailey Zappi this year. And that is going to be my final thought of the podcast.
All right, Brett, what do you got for us? Any final words of wisdom?
Yeah, I just want to say, I'm glad that we're back doing this again. I really hope that we can continue this throughout the whole season. We're going to try our best to do weekly uploads, but we'll see how that goes with everybody's schedules. And yeah, as a Patriots fan, all I could really ask for this year is that we just continue to develop Drake May, and that we don't throw him in there just because the team sucks. I want them to throw him in there when he's ready, and when the offense is ready to protect and all that. So I don't have high expectations for the Patriots. All I can hope for is that the trajectory is like this.
All right. Yeah, I'll echo what you guys are saying. It is definitely very exciting to be back on the air with you guys. For anybody that's watching, maybe you scrubbed to the end of the podcast. Just a reminder that 4 Quarters of a Whole Idiot is just an extension of the 4QWI umbrella. That's the website that we run, 4QWI.com. Even if the consistency of the season will remain to be seen, you can definitely expect at least a weekly article from the staff that run the website, consisting of fantasy football starts and sits, and maybe some extra content along the way. So if you're even more into football than listening to this podcast, there's other ways to kind of get content from us throughout the season, and we'll do our best to provide it. And so the next time you can expect to see us is hopefully in about 3 weeks from now, following Thursday Night Football's conclusion on September 5th. Hopefully we'll be live. That's September 6th to do a recap of Thursday night, that Ravens-Chiefs game, and the week 1 games ahead. So hopefully we'll be back then. If not, we'll be back hopefully sometime soon with another podcast, and hopefully also with additional hosts. So speaking for everybody here, thanks for hanging out with us. This has been 4 Quarters of a Whole Idiot. We will catch you